Hi guys. I know this might feel a little bit early for some of you, but today's video is going to be about the Christmas cards that I created for my Etsy shop. Now, after the illustrations for autumn did pretty well, I really wanted to create some more creature themed cards over on my shop. And I kind of like the idea of following the seasons, so these are all going to be a bit more winter themed, but also a bit Christmassy too. So my plan is to run through the cards a bit first and then go into some of the speed paints, just so you can see like this mix of the process and the final products. Because I was imagining these illustrations as a collection from the get-go, I did take a lot of time choosing out which colours I thought would all work well together and thinking about which creatures that I wanted to focus on in each of the cards. I think a key thing to me was I want these to feel unique, because it's one thing to go into the shop and you get these traditional cards and traditional creatures that are always on Christmas cards. But if you go into a specific illustrator or artist, I think it can be fun to see them take on different creatures that you could still link to winter and Christmas. So though you will see a robin and a reindeer in this collection, they're kind of a more interesting take, I hope. Or I hope so at least. And the rest are more creatures that I think I would probably be interested in buying as well, such as like the polar bear or the Arctic fox. But I'll start with traditional. So when I designed the robin card, I knew I wanted to focus more on the patterns in the composition rather than just the robin. So I had this idea to have the robin kind of nestled in a holly bush. That way I could then simplify the background down and make it look almost like a pattern. And then because it was simpler, it would work better to just frame the robin kind of simply into nice and simple illustration. Simple, simple, simple. Anyway, for me this was one of the strongest cards because I really like the restricted colour palette in it, and of reds and greens. I feel like those two colours especially are very Christmassy to me. And I think overall, because it's a very simple, oh my god, composition, it just works better when it comes to smaller illustrations. I'm not saying the word simple again for the rest of the video, okay? But on that, I'm going to take a moment to try and remember that I know other adjectives in the world and show you the process behind the robin piece, so some music. So I hope you'll enjoy seeing a little bit of how this one was made, and I'll come back to talk about a couple of the other cards. So the next cards that you're going to be seeing were both inspired by some of the Inktober pieces that I created through October. Those two words are starting to become interchangeable to me, which you can see in my sketchbook tour as well, which I'll try and remember to link. Basically, they're both pieces that I felt had some really strong characters in them, and I knew I wanted to kind of take them a bit further and maybe add a bit of colour too, so this really gave me the perfect opportunity to do so. I've been trying to phase out pre-sketching on paper recently, especially when it comes to digital art, because not that I don't appreciate having a scan to work from when I'm painting digitally, but I sometimes feel like I lose a little bit in the process. Often when I'm sketching onto paper, I'll go and take those sketches and use them directly in my traditional painting, so the image kind of stays the same from one step to the next. But digitally, the medium is so different from how I draw on paper to how I draw on the drawing tablet. I feel like the thing that comes out of it is often very different to me. So it kind of makes more sense to do the preliminary sketches digitally and kind of mimic that same process that I would do traditionally, so that the images don't seem massively different between one stage to the next. So I think at this point I'm kind of changing my approach a lot when it comes to digital illustrations. And I think it's a large part of why I'm starting to feel more confident in them as well. Because now I'll just warm up my hand with some early sketches of ideas and use that page of scribbles as a guide when I go and map out the illustration digitally, instead of scanning it in and trying to use it directly. I hope that ramble made sense and wasn't too dull. I guess I really like hearing the process behind somebody's art and the way that they think about these problems. So when I'm changing up my methods, I really want to mention it so that we can really start this conversation, because I know a lot of artists watch me and I feel very lucky in knowing that. So I like to know, how do you guys follow these problems? How do you work between digital and traditional art? Because I think flipping between the two, for me at least, I think it does take, it's almost like a different part of your mind, and I guess maybe flipping one to the other, I find it kind of difficult to go between. So I'd like to know how you guys approach that. So the main difference from these illustrations and their Inktober counterparts, apart from them being in colour, were that I tried to further simplify the characters again, and I think that's most noticeable when it comes to the penguins. So recently when I paint animals, I've started adding some colour around the nose and the eye area. I really like this contrast of colour there especially. I don't know why it is, but to me it makes them feel a lot more alive. And I kind of imagine it like breathing or air or energy, I guess. I started doing this a while back with the Otter watercolour painting that I did earlier this year, and I did it back then for the exact same reason. I just felt like it made her character feel more alive to me, and I just think it's a really nice way of adding a little depth and shading without adding muted shadows onto it. Anything to not distract from my ridiculously high contrast coloured art. But anyway, I've wanted to address that for a little while now because I keep gravitating towards it, especially recently in my art, and I think it just makes an interesting discussion point for you guys too. Do you guys have little moments like this when you're painting or sketching that are just there and they exist because in your imagination that's how you interpret a character or place? Like this little bit of colour to try and add some life and energy to the faces? Do you feel like you need to add these little unrealistic details which in turn makes your art feel more real to you for some reason? Or am I just going a bit crazy? I don't know. To me, it makes me very happy to add a bit of colour to my animals in this way. And I guess that's all style really is, isn't it? It's just doing something peculiar because it makes you happy. But anyway, I want to leave you on that thought and hear your thoughts on it. So finally, we have the final two cards that I painted, and I painted these a few weeks after the other four, because I really didn't know if I'd have the chance to do these. I had the idea, but with Folktale Week kind of looming, I had to kind of put them on hold. The reindeer was really a twist on some of the more traditional cards that feature reindeers and kind of Christmas ornaments and that idea, whereas the fox is kind of more a homage to the red panda one that I did for autumn. When I painted the red panda, I was really inspired by, those videos of red pandas being spooked by zookeepers, and I knew I wanted to paint that character and its kind of like goofy expression and kind of like just play with the poses more in a card. And I kind of had that same thought process when it came to the Arctic fox. I really like seeing those videos and when you see clips in documentaries of Arctic foxes diving into the snow to hunt. So I wanted to do kind of a cute take on that dive, and once I did that I just knew I wanted to develop that character again in the way I did with the red panda. I could imagine those two characters being quite good friends. But yeah, the Arctic Fox card probably ended up being one of my favourites from the set. I think it's because I kind of like that it's a bit more delicate and less heavy in appearance than some of the others. I kept the colours very soft and pale, and I think that gave the feeling of snow a lot better than, say, just like a texture overlay alone could have done. I say that, but I did use a lot of pastel brush textures when I made this because I wanted to look very soft, and I kind of had this mini battle with myself to try and make sure that they didn't just disappear into the snow. I think it's kind of like a difficult balance when it comes to playing with such light colours on white, in the same way it would be the reverse of dark colours and dark. But yeah, when I completed these characters, I played around with them until I found a composition that I liked. But then when it came to that background, like I say, I had to think a lot about how do I add a little bit of detail there so that they don't look like they're floating in some kind of white space. But also I really don't want to distract, and these were already very simple characters. So I kind of did the keep it simple stupid method and restricted myself to some very faint pastel brushstrokes and some just simple lines to try and indicate some grass and ground. I think this illustration is very pared back for me, but I also think it kind of made for one of the most interesting effects overall. I also used an overlay texture that I made a while back from some cardboard scans that I did, and I feel it adds this nice grain to the illustrations without kind of making them appear too flat and digital, if you know what I mean by that. I think you kind of have to go two ways with digital art. I think you have to go very flat and no texture, or add lots of texture so it has a traditional look, and I personally always err towards traditional, so I really like adding these kind of simple scan textures that I can create. So I'm going to wander off into the ether one more time and let you see the process behind how I did this piece, and then I'm going to come back once more to kind of talk about the series overall. So there they all are, all together now. I love seeing them all together. There's something really nice about creating a series of illustrations where they all interact somewhat with each other. It's like kind of in the challenge weeks. I think there's a lot of fun in thinking about how are these colours going to work together and playing with the lights and darks across multiple illustrations. I think it kind of gives you this chance to play with mood a lot, and hopefully in that experimentation you can all see a card that you would like to receive at Christmas. It'd be interesting to know which of these speaks out to you the most as your favourite, because I feel like this is kind of like a real mixed bag of art and styles, and yeah, I just think it'd be interesting to know which one you gravitate towards. I personally probably like the Arctic Fox and the Robin the best, but green and white are my favourite colours, so I think it could just be as simple as that. But anyway, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and that you found the process behind these illustrations interesting and not simple, because I just can't stop using that word. If you can't tell, I've got a little bit of a cold. I'm just a bit run down, guys. So I hope this wasn't horrifically boring to listen to. If not, you can always just mute me and play your own music. I can imagine some of the music that would go with this art. But anyway, I hope you found it interesting to see the processes behind this. And if you'd like to see or buy any of the cards to support me in my artwork, I link the Etsy at the end and in my description as always. this isn't going to be the end of the Christmas content or even content on this channel before Christmas. I'm going to be taking part in Childhood Week over on Instagram this first week of December, and then I have some new 2019 Christmas DIYs coming, hopefully by the second week of December, so there should be some fun, simple crafts and crafts to do over the Christmas period, you guys, so I hope it'll give you something fun to do while you've got some time off. I really hope you're all keeping warm and cozy, and I'll see you all again soon.